7 o'clock, meeting of the Planning Commission will come to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
David Dahl. Margot Moran.
Here.
Britton Sanders.
Here.
Greg Sutton.
Here.
Colleen Murphy-White.
Here.
Justin Lehrman.
Here.
All right. So approval of minutes, none. I do think we have the July 26th minutes, though, in front of us. Discussion? Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You guys may remember that I actually spoke to this issue. Not the issue specific to the placement of homes on the Ameris Bank site, but the fact that parking was involved and that we have been speaking now for years about updating the vision for the city, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regs. And I was kind of doing that both to remind us, because I've been on the commission since 2016 and we haven't done it yet, but also to get it on the record, so it's not in the minutes. I felt slightly dissed. But I'm happy to just sort of, defer to staff on including that, assuming that you remember that exchange. And I'll make a motion if the chair is comfortable with that, or we could perhaps wordsmith it if that's more appropriate.
I do recall that discussion, Mr. Popoli. How would you like to handle that? Would you like to revise the minutes and we'll approve them next meeting, or?
That's probably the easiest.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
And we will pass on any vote on the July 26th minutes. Any correspondence?
No, sir.
Just as a matter of order, I'm going to move new business first this evening, so we'll handle item number 6 first, then followed by old business PC 0821. So with that, PC 09-21.
Through the chair, PC 0921 is a conditional use application for a single-family dwelling at property located in the Commercial Limited Central Business District zoning district, pursuant to section 34345D9. As a quick aside, if you were to look at the Muni Code for this particular section, it currently lists it as reserved. There was an amendment to the Land Development Code that was passed a few years ago to allow for single family in the Central Business District. It has sadly not been incorporated to the online version yet. We're in the works of correcting that, but number 9 in that section is for single family in the Central Business District. It also references using the RS3 standards for single family, so just so that's clear for you guys. The subject property is located on the northwest corner of the 1st Street South and 2nd Avenue South intersection. The site currently has a 2-unit multifamily structure, which is likely a converted single family. In 2017, the Land Development Code was amended by Ordinance 2017-8097, which added single-family dwellings as a conditional use using the RS3 zoning district standards. Though the CBD district is predominantly commercial and multifamily structure, there are existing single-family and room for additional infill. The proposed use would be a 3-story single-family home with a 2-car garage. Though the home will lack driveway space for overflow parking on the site, it does have a large driveway apron and access to 2 on-street public spaces adjacent to the 2nd Avenue South side of the property. The proposed single-family design reflects a similar footprint to existing multifamily structures in the area. The new design will take into account the requirements for clear sight triangle visibility and have a chamfered first floor corner at the intersection. For all other uses in the Central Business District zoning, lot coverage is at 80 or 90% of the lot, while the front corner setbacks and side setbacks of 0 and a rear side ranging from 0 to 5 feet. Because the RS3 zoning standards are more akin to residential subdivision design, the project will require subsequent variances slated to be heard by the Board of Adjustments early next month. The proposed single-family dwelling is consistent with the mixed residential and commercial character of the area and should not negatively impact the adjacent properties.
All right, thank you. Just very briefly for those in attendance, the manner in which we conduct the applications is that staff will read the application into the record, as Mr. Capoli has just done on this. At that point, if the applicant's present, we'll have them come forward stating their name and address, fielding any questions from the planning commissioners. I don't have any speaker cards this evening, but if I had speaker cards, then anyone wishing to speak in favor or in opposition to the application would be invited to do so. And at that point, public portion of the meeting would be closed, and then discussion would be between the applicant, staff, and the planning commissioners. Keeping in mind that everything that we consider is taking into consideration section 34, 234, 231, and the 11 standards that are set forth in the land development code. So with that, please raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And if you can please state your name and address for the record.
Eric Griggs, 932 First Street North, and 602 Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
Thank you. Mr. Griggs, is there anything additional that you would like to offer that we have heard from staff, or that we haven't heard from staff?
The only thing I would add would be, because of the non-conforming of the lot, I couldn't do a duplex there if I wanted to, because I couldn't have on-site parking. So I'm kind of single family, which I want to be my residence anyway. So that's the direction.
Questions for the applicant?
Mr. Griggs, so you said this is going to be your primary residence?
Yes.
I'm just curious, are you tearing it down and building new, or are you remodeling the current structure? Tearing down and building new? Looks very
Been
nice.
there for quite a while.
I'm sorry?
The one that's there has been there since.
Yeah, I'm
1920,
assuming.
I think.
Yeah, looks that way. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any speaker cards. Anyone wishing to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, public portion of the meeting is closed. Discussion, or do I have a motion?
Got a question, Mr. Bali. Where is the driveway on this?
If you're, basically the center middle where it says proposed concrete drive, that lines up with garage that's part of the structure. But it is off the property because the property is so small. That is technically, it's a very large right of way right there.
Okay.
What isn't necessarily clear as well on the site plan is just east of that are two improved on-street spaces as well, which were referenced in the report.
Thank you.
Those are between that proposed concrete drive in the corner there?
Correct.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as well.
Yes, sir.
I don't see the chamfered corner on the layout plan, on the site plan. Is that?
There were several versions of the site plan. The one that's dated August 11th is the most recent, and that has the corner cut off on the first floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No other questions from me.
Any further questions, discussion, or do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Margot Mori,
Yes.
David Dahl,
Yes.
Brendan Sanders,
Yes.
Colleen Murphy-White,
Yes.
Greg Sutton.
Yes. All right. Good luck with the Board of Adjustment. All right, PC 08-21.
Through the chair, PC 0821 is a request for amendment to a plan unit development located at 3818 3rd Street South. Plan unit development, PUD zoning amendment approval. At the previous hearing on July 26th, the Planning Commission and applicant agreed to a deferral of the proposed PUD amendment, allowing the applicant and staff to develop and attempt to reach a consensus on new conditions related to the proposed PUD. The previous memo has been provided for reference. Staff sent the revised conditions to the applicant on August 4th. Staff has reviewed the proposed conditions with the applicant and believes that the proposed conditions meet the spirit of the Planning Commission's comments, as well as address the concerns of the applicant where appropriate. The applicant may have concerns to address with the Planning Commission. However, staff recommends the following revised conditions. 1. The outdoor restaurant area shall be allowed as shown on Exhibit H site plan and shall not require a conditional use approval, but will be permitted. All outdoor restaurant areas shall adhere to the requirements as described in Section 34-407 of the Land Development Code, except those portions amended by this ordinance as they pertain to seating and seating allocation. Number 2, all outdoor restaurant areas shall adhere to the general requirements as described in Section 34-425H with regards to site visibility at site triangles at intersections for internal drive lanes and parking aisles. Number 3, outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to drive aisles shall provide some form of hardened barrier to protect the outside dining area from potential vehicle conflict. Creative forms of barriers may be considered under the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design, CPTED, best practices. Final designs of barriers to be determined through the standard design review process. Number 4, outdoor restaurant areas may have outside speakers, but shall be limited to low volume, outdoor amplified and acoustic sound as defined in Section 18-7 of the Municipal Code in effect at the time of adoption. Number 5, outdoor restaurant areas shall cease operation at 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday and at 10 p.m. on Sundays. Number 6, outdoor display of merchandise shall be permitted at all retail locations as shown in Exhibit H site plan. However, clear sidewalk access shall be maintained to the balance of the shopping centers at all times, and a clear ADA compliant path be maintained at all times along any sidewalk or walkway. And one quick comment, previously there was some language related to fire sprinklers and that subject matter. We're going to defer to the fire marshal because it's really his call anyway and just removed it from the zoning side of the conversation. Happy to take any questions.
All right. Mr. Divinow, do you want to?
I have a question, Mr. Chair, before we
Yes,
call
sir.
the witnesses here. Mr. Copley, I'm looking at PC 210823 memo that was delivered to my home via mail. And on page 6, the third item addresses outside speakers on Jacksonville Drive. And I didn't hear you say anything about that. In fact, once you got past number 2, all my numbers were different than what you have.
Okay, I think there may have been a mistake in what was sent to you guys. I think Mr. Dean and I had the same problem. There was a copy of the memo on the dais when you came in. I'm not sure if that was what was sent to you guys. There was basically a updated cover memo, and then the previous one was included in the packet.
Okay. Let me ask you about the previous recommendations from staff, and I understand the staff recommendations to be from staff and the developer because y'all were working on this together. And that's the way I would reference it, is a staff developer recommendation. Why was number 3 there on the copy that I have, which says there shall be no outside speakers permitted for outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive, and now it's not there?
That's kind of a mystery. It was a mystery to me that it showed up, but I thought maybe some common sense broke through. Possibly.
Okay, so that was initially the thought process was there were proposed outside restaurant areas that were near the main entrance that is along Jacksonville Drive, and that might actually present some conflict. After the discussion at the Planning Commission hearing last time, it was decided, or at least my notes reflected, that we would simply use the low volume requirement that's pervasive throughout the city as the standard, which basically only allows low volume, outside speakers, no live music, that sort of thing.
Well, I remember that conversation as well, and what I heard was Mr. Deebenow say multiple times that low volume amplified music at all of these restaurant sites was compatible. It's compatible use.
Right.
I disagree, because I've lived there through low volume amplified outside music, and I don't think that's correct. And I just wonder what assessment came through your staff developer team working through this to provide this document that I got that says there shall be no outside speakers permitted for outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive. What was the logic to that?
Like I said, originally our thought process was that was the most adjacent to existing residential.
Okay.
But again, the outside amplified low volume standard, which is again throughout the city.
Yeah, that's 30 feet, 5 feet apart, we can speak.
Right.
That's the standard. For a fireworks display as well, yeah, okay.
At any rate, rather than limiting it to just Jacksonville
And I'm
Drive,
deaf, I don't hear very well.
the intent was just to apply the same standard universally, because it is allowed in the rest of the city where there are similar proximities to residential. But again, that's our recommendation.
Well, I would just point out here at this point, before we get started too far in, that there is a governing document called the Comprehensive Plan, the Jacks Beach 23rd Comprehensive Plan.
Mm-hmm.
And the first two elements in it for land use are quality of life and character of the community. And both of those bear on this because they apply to everybody in this room and really everybody in the community, because they apply to the mayor, they apply to the council members, they apply to the city volunteers, which are we're city volunteers. They apply to all our citizens and to community leaders and our business development centers of influence, which are sitting out here in the audience. And that's all of us here tonight. And I thought it was a wise decision for the developer planning department team to recommend that there be no outside speakers permitted for outdoor restaurant areas located adjacent to Jacksonville Drive and open till 11 o'clock every night. I measured those distances today, and the distance between the furthest point where you can put an outdoor speaker on those northern areas is 220 feet. That's 2.1 standard lots away. So if I were looking for a home and I went and talked to my realtor, and the realtor said, well, there's a place 220 feet from here, 2 lots down, where Mr. Popley has 60 people or more every night for dinner and drinks from 6 to 11 o'clock at night. I don't think I'd buy that house. Nothing in between it either. It's wide open. There's no barriers, no walls, nothing. So the Jacksonville Drive folks don't have that option that you would have if you were talking to a realtor about buying in Coconut Key. They can't move without selling, and if they're selling, people are going to ask why. Maybe, I don't know how they'll do it, but if I were looking at a home there and the developer told me, or the realtor told me the truth, I wouldn't buy it. I don't think a lot of people with children, and there's a lot of kids in Coconut Key, keep everybody up till 11 o'clock. And I think everybody in Jacksonville Beach likes to open their windows in the fall and the winter for fresh air without hearing Maroon 5 at Warp 5 in the evening. And, you know, I don't think they like that. So I would say that based on the quality of life and community character, that's the goals LU1, Land Use 1, and Land Use 1.4, drive us towards the decision that I read here in this paper that was delivered to me by the planning department that says there shall be no outside speakers permitted for outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive. Well, I thought that was a reasonable decision. And then my follow-on to that was going to be, well, it's 493 feet from the former Applebee's Plaza there on the east side of AT&T. That's 4.2 lots away. And though that place is probably not quite as big for the outside seating, so those folks that live straight across to the east, across A1A, have a reflective catch pond, some scraggly, some longleaf pines that have all their foliage up on the top, nothing down low, and flat concrete going across the street. So they're going to hear every word that's said sitting there at the AT&T / Applebee's outside seating. And that goes, we got a break. We did get a break on this. We got a break on Sunday night. It only goes till 10. Only goes till 10 on Sunday night. The rest of the week it goes to 11. So I would say that if we look at the comp plan and we apply it to this situation, I don't think Mr. Debenau's assessment last week that it's compatible is compatible with the way the comp plan tells us to look at these things. And I'm unhappy, I really am unhappy that this no outside speakers on Jacksonville Drive got dropped somehow. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Any comment, Mr. Popoli, or want to move on?
Only that the previous memo was provided. If you wish to add that back in, you're welcome to. That's why we provided it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, sir. I am. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Debenau? Raise your right hand.
Good evening. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Steve Debenau, Drive, Suite 1200, here on behalf of the applicant. So we agree with the 6 conditions that were outlined in the staff report dated August 23rd. Is the only issue going to be the speakers? I guess that would be my question. I guess it's for everyone. Or is everything else? Does everything else look okay?
Mr. Debenau, this is Britt. I didn't make the last meeting, unfortunately, but I do have some questions and some comments. Reading through this, can you just talk a little bit about, first of all, the safety around these new outdoor seating areas where one of the primary egresses of the shopping center?
Yeah, so we had conversations about that at the last meeting, and what we arrived at, there was a lot of discussion around it. And condition number 3 is the end result of that, what I think captured the conversation, which was that if there's any outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to the drive aisles, that there has to be some form of hardened barrier that prevents potential vehicular conflict. And rather than micromanaging whether it was going to be bollards or an iron gate or an aluminum fence or boulders, basically set that up as the criteria and then allowed the final design to be determined during the design review process. So that was one way that they were protected. The other one is in condition number 2, that there would be a site visibility triangle that's referenced in 34-425. We had a great deal of conversation about site visibility triangles on public streets versus interior roads. And rather than adopting the criteria for site visibility triangles on public streets, the conditions in 34-425H that talk about a visibility triangle on internal drive lanes and parking aisles would be implemented. And so that's a 10-foot visibility triangle. If there is seating, basically that there can't be anything over the certain heights within that triangle so that you have visibility for folks coming around those corners. So conditions 2 and 3 are what addressed your question about safety in the outdoor seating areas.
Question through the chair, Mr. Pauly, can you talk about the final design for these barriers? Who makes the final determination on that?
So the way the recommendation was written was that it would go through the typical site plan review that we do at the staff level. A lot of times landscaping, parking, those sorts of design elements are reviewed at the staff level through a standard permit process. The language that was included, although seems very general, is actually specific to there are forms of target hardening that deal with vehicular barriers that are designed to be more incorporated into the landscape or the parking area, so it doesn't appear to be a large concrete bollards, but could be a reinforced planter that's capable of stopping a car, but looks more appealing and less militaristic. So that was the intent of the way we worded it, that ultimately, if the developer proposed something that meets the standard of a vehicle barrier, but is more, visually appealing, that could be an alternative that could be considered.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm not a designer of the ballards, but my first reaction is just safety. So if we're comfortable with that language from a city standpoint, that the patrons there at the restaurant are protected, that would be my question.
Yeah, that was certainly the clear intent when we drafted it. If the language is something that needs to be tweaked.
In the design review, you guys would have some type of impact study on.
Yeah, there are products available that.
Yeah, there are ASTM standards around. Are you opposed to, if we didn't want to call out specifically that they're going to be either concrete or steel bollards, that we call out the criteria?
Yeah.
That a minimum ASTM, I think C40 is the one that allows for a car at 30 miles an hour, even though theoretically nobody should be going 30 miles an hour. But, grandma or grandpa hits the accelerator versus the brake, making a turn or whatever, stuff does happen, and none of us can guarantee anything. If we called out sort of that minimum rating, and then whatever they want to put there, as long as it meets that rating.
Yeah, everything's going to come through a design professional, engineer, or architect, so if there's a standard that we can reference, honestly, that's probably perfect.
Okay.
Would you mind, you had it, I'm not an engineer,
I
so.
think it's a ASTM C40 is sort of the minimal one that is intended. I still think that allows for a barrier to be moved something like 24 inches, which, if you had somebody right there at a table, could be bad, but
Right.
24, if there's a whole bunch of tables on one of those corners, 24 inches is certainly better than allowing a car to pile right up through the crowd of
Yeah,
people.
well, if there is a standard, and the standard has a distance.
Oh, there's all kinds of standards. You
Right.
could have a bollard that's in front of the Pentagon, but we don't need that.
No.
You know.
We can certainly verify that that's the right number, but it's a starting point, so.
So if we were to, I would recommend modifying item number 3 to call out that ASTM C40 rating and leave it up to the developer, the applicant to, achieve that in whatever manner that they would like to. It might also be worthy of calling out that I think the expectation is for, again, on that northern ingress and egress, for those entire seating areas to be enclosed or encompassed by.
That is a traffic area. I
By what
read
we're
that.
talking about, other than the side that faces, obviously, the business,
Yeah, that's my biggest concern is that entry point.
Well, there'll be people on both sides of that roadway,
Correct.
that interior
Potentially.
roadway.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially, if they're serving the right stuff. and you'll see your buddy and you wanna
I
walk
think
across the
that may
street.
be the intent, but I mean, today there's just a laundry mat on one side or whatever, so.
Much longer. Yeah. And both of those are drive-through lanes that were used,
Right.
where they're gonna be sitting.
Mr. DiMino, you asked for the only other question I had is, I thought I saw in here about overnight. I know we're adding display merchandise onto the outside. Is there any language that requires them to bring that merchandise in at night so that we don't have a bunch of display stuff there overnight?
We did have discussion on that.
Yeah, well, again, I think the distinction that we were having in the conversation previously was that for folks that were gonna have permanent stuff that stayed outside that needed to be sprinkled, if stuff was coming in and that would be like Home Depot, for example. If there was stuff coming in and out every night, like the bird feed store, that wouldn't necessarily need to be sprinkled because stuff's coming in every night and it's temporary or seasonal. So we kind of had the conversation about sprinkling in the context of permanent versus temporary. Since the sprinkling has been kind of put off on the fire marshal, that took away the sprinkling conversation, so now you're raising another issue, which we're certainly happy to have the conversation about it tonight, but that's the reason why the distinction was, I think, lost in this version.
So when you added sprinklers, it became a non-issue, but
When we deferred the sprinkler, no sprinkler issue to the fire marshal, then that really kind of leaves it up to the fire marshal to tell us when we have to have sprinklers.
okay.
So, if you like less than permanent outside display, then we probably need to have a conversation about it. If you want there to be temporary daytime only display, then probably need to have a conversation.
Can you tell us about any material that they're trying to keep overnight out there? Like what the need of that would be?
I mean, Patrick,
It's probably not gonna be much of
Yeah.
that or any, Home Depot, what they do the DD process.
so yeah, maybe you should talk up here and let give your name and address.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And please state your name and address for the record.
Patrick McKinley, 1 Suite 114, National Folder 32202. The Home Depot has permanent outside storage. I'm not envisioning permanent storage for any other tenant. Some tenants do like to bring some goods outside, whether it's Five Below or Wild Birds, and they do it in a nice clean manner. And we would actually prefer them to take it in. So that's okay with me.
I would like to add that there shall be no overnight merchandise or displays of merchandise left outside except in parcel 4, which is Home Depot. Steve?
No, I was just gonna, thank you, you used the word display, because I think Patrick said storage, and there's the distinction, so you made the distinction in your condition. That's great, it's the display, permanent display versus temporary display.
Yeah, because there's storage in the back, right?
I was actually distinguishing between merchandise being left out there, which you'd probably be crazy if you left your merchandise out there, versus the displays actually being left out there that merchandise would go on. I was saying that neither would be left outside.
That's fine.
Except in, again, we probably want to call out except in parcel 4 because we allow that today, so.
We can ask about issues, you brought up at the 11 o'clock time, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
I did think that we had a 10 o'clock discussion instead of an 11 o'clock last time.
My opinion, lights out for a schoolhouse, a house that has kids in it that go to school, is 10 o'clock, it's not 11 o'clock. And if you're 2.1 lots away, you're gonna hear what's going on at 2 independent operations with all kinds of cars all over the place, people leaving doing the intercoastal bridge run on their motorcycles and tuner cars, running up there and jamming up that hill. Every once in a while, the police know that guys will get splattered on there. They're going 130 miles an hour on a cafe racer and they lose it.
Let me ask you guys a question. What do you think about making it 10 o'clock Sunday through Thursday, 11 o'clock Friday and Saturday, and I think Steve was asking about this to begin with, adding that there shall be no outside speakers permitted for outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive, and then just pick up where number 4 does. Other restaurant areas may have outside speakers, but shall be limited to blah, 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 blah.
Well, here's my reaction to it. First of all, I was under the impression that we had already solved the hours of operation because we had originally asked to go till midnight and we agreed to go to 11 o'clock. So I thought we had closed that.
Who agreed?
I'm sorry?
Who's we?
We had a conversation about hours.
Yeah, I never agreed.
We had originally asked until midnight.
Well, that's fine, Steve, but
We can go to the tape.
don't be overly broad. We can go to the tape.
Well, I think what you'd find in the tape is that I said, look, in order to try and get this done tonight, we would go to 11 o'clock. And there was pretty broad, I saw a lot of nodding on that particular point.
Pretty broad's a good term.
Look, here's the issue. You're going to limit the number or the quality of tenants that you can get in there. The more you limit the hours, the music that we're talking about is not music.
We recognize, Steve. Go ahead, I'll wait till you're done. Talk to me about the music.
No, go ahead. It's your show. It's your part. This is your meeting.
We recognize the commercial realities. We recognize what the web did during the COVID period. We understand the space needs to be filled with paying tenants that can pay their rent. We understand that. But that doesn't mean that because somebody owns a shopping center, they can step on their neighbors. That isn't what it means. And I was looking for a little cooperation and broad consensus from you on that, but maybe we're not going to get it. I don't think we are, but I sure wish we could. And I did the best I could to explain what the comprehensive plan says about that. And I did my best to explain what the noise is and the distance and the effect it's going to have on the neighbors. Now, if you choose to ignore that, that's fine. And I won't speak about it anymore because I think I've covered it. And like you said, we have a tape. But I don't remember saying to you that I thought you should stay open till 11 o'clock on weeknights. When people go to work at 6 o'clock, I hear them every morning leaving at 5:30.
May I address the points that were just made? So, look, first of all, the type of music that we're talking about is music, like what you hear in an elevator. This isn't a band. This isn't a boombox. These aren't speakers that are pointed towards the neighborhood. This isn't, whatever you described, whatever condition you described previously about outdoor music and that stuff, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is music that you hear for ambiance when you're sitting and waiting to go to sit down inside, when you are sitting outside. We're not talking about a selection of music that's there for entertainment.
What is can I ask this question because I think it's relevant, because I think it's going to go this way anyway, but who do we call besides the police if we have people in Coconut Key or across A1A that are unhappy with the volume of the music at 9:30 or 10:30 or 11:30?
Well, you've been equating people speaking to ambiance music. I mean, that's sort of what you've been saying, is that the people speaking is about the same size, same
Well, I
voice.
think what I was talking about was the code, and the code is 30 feet away from the noise source, 2 people 5 feet apart can have a conversation and still hear each other.
Yeah, and
That's the standard, and I mean, that standard could apply in a lot of situations.
okay, well, I mean, it's like so many different thoughts. There are people outside in the Outback Steakhouse right now, which is directly across 3rd Street. It's 200 feet away from the next closest house, directly across 3rd Street. How many noise complaints have there been from the houses across 3rd Street from the Outback? I don't know, probably 0. If I were gonna bet, I'll take the over-under on 1, okay, I'll take the under. So, that's what we're talking about.
Well, we don't know what that number is, and we don't know who's unhappy over there.
I-
My question wasn't about Outback Steakhouse. My question was about the South Park here that we're talking about.
So-
And who do we call? Who do those people from Coconut Key call?
Like anything, you call the people that you call the city, you make a code complaint. You make a code complaint based on noise or based on whatever condition that's not operating properly. And that's why you have the standards. That's why you have section 18.7 or 18-7
So,
that defines the noise that's permitted.
so you just say, I'm taking this tonight for another hour and a half, but I'll call in the morning. Is that what you do?
Well, no, you,
In the house that you live in?
I mean, I can come up with doomsday scenarios for any set of facts, for any condition that I would ask for. I mean, if I ran that out to its extreme, we shouldn't have restaurants next door to residential at all. Because there's a chance that someone might leave the restaurant drunk and jump over the fence and go into their backyard. What are you gonna do?
That's a good straw dog, but it doesn't work.
Well, but that's.
Because we've got 5 other standards here that we're gonna approve. The only one we're talking about is music.
And my point is that the more you limit the hours of operation, the more you limit the noise, the more that you ratchet down on music, you're just lessening the quality of tenant that you can get. You're making it so narrow that you may not have the best available tenants.
Well, I understand your points, and I understand why you're making them, and I'm glad to stop right here. I won't say anymore.
I do think the MUSAC itself, not really an issue so much. The, potential later at night, a bunch of people and alcohol.
Football game
And
days.
that noise that could occur, that comes from that crowd, not from the amplified music, I don't think at all. At that point, I think the amplified music is a nit. That has some validity to it, it just does. Steve's point as far as the clientele that they're gonna be able to draw, is also an issue, so. Not clientele, but tenants that they're gonna be able to draw.
TVs fall under the low volume.
Yes, they do.
Mr. Demo, I got a quick question for you, sir, if you don't mind. Can you just, I don't know if you know this, but how many roughly outdoor tables are we talking about in let's just say the
Yeah, that's
Jacksonville Drive area?
It's a great question, and based on the geometry, I'd say it's probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 tables. It's, I think the outside space, give me just a second here to look at the, at a scale exhibit. So do you have a plan? So it's 45 tables? Okay. Right. So for the one that's on the eastern one right now, there's 4 tops and 2 tops. So that would be 16, 17, 18, there would be 20, wait, there would be 12, 16,
Yeah,
20 seats
20 seats.
outside. Now, the other side may be configured differently, but,
And what's the turn ratio there? Is an hour and a half?
I'm sorry, there's 2 more 2 tops in front of the building itself that are not out front. So altogether it's 24 seats. And the turn on those seats, an hour, hour and a half, I think is probably a reasonable.
That's about 60 people in that, makes sense.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, we are trying to build space. We are trying to get revenue, of course. That's part of it, but it's also so that it's a good quality place. I mean, there's a quality factor here as well. Having somebody in there that's a good quality tenant is better than having it dark for everybody, for everybody's property values and for everybody's well-being. Anyway.
Steve, I don't remember us talking about having it okayed by 11 o'clock. I do remember that was one of the arguments, and that's when I had suggested to the chair that we could come back and revisit this, but I don't remember anybody saying, yes, we all approve. Secondly, your argument that you're not going to get quality tenants in there over a five-day period, 60 minutes a day, that's 300 minutes. I don't think that holds water, just as you were trying to say that Mr. Dahl's argument that everyone's going to wake up in the morning and call the police or, call the city and say, hey, this is too loud. I think you can still get quality tenants in there, and you can always come back and ask them to change the code if things are happening and if they can say we have had no complaints. If the time were 10 o'clock.
Through the chair, if I could just add a point that officer pointed out that I had completely forgotten. So the condition related to low volume music and the condition related to hours of operation were separate. One of the reasons, as he pointed out, 18.7 actually limits low volume music to 10 p.m. Has to cut off. So really the seating could be available till whenever, but the music has to stop regardless at 10 o'clock. So the question of how long it's open is really going to be to the conversational volume of people versus the music. I don't know if that helps, but
Do we don't have a standard on how late we allow for outdoor seating across Jacksonville Beach, do we? And we could probably point out several restaurants that are adjacent to other residential homes, so I'm just curious.
yeah, there's not a set standard. I mean, certainly there's been more discretion, I think, given towards ones that are near the central business district versus ones that are more off of like Penman and things like that, which,
Doing like
goes late,
Monkey's Uncle and some of those others that are right up next to,
I live next to them,
yeah,
but they're out there all.
yeah,
There's been traffic and parking complaints,
I'm sure parking, yeah.
lots.
So no standards on,
No, there's not a consistency throughout the city, no.
So Bonefish is open until 11:30 at night, Whiskey Jack's is open until 1 a.m. They both have residential behind them. I'm just giving data, no idea what the status of complaints might be. But there's no standard. And certainly the music cutting off at 10 o'clock, that'd be great. Again, we're not trying to get entertainment, we're just trying to have mood music. In terms of hours of operation, I guess we just have a very fundamental difference of how the last meeting went. Because I have in my notes what I was asking for, and it was 12 a.m. Monday through Saturday, 11 p.m. on Sundays. I scratched that out, and I circled 10 p.m. on Sundays and 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So I based on my notes from my recollection of the meeting, I thought that's where we had kind of gone. I thought we were there.
So Whiskey Jack's, I just looking it up, and it just makes sense to me. Their initial recommendation makes a heck of a lot of sense, where they're closed, at 10 o'clock on weekdays, and then Friday, Saturday, a little later. Whiskey Jack's is to 12:30, and then Monday through Thursday, 10. I really like that first recommendation you put out, and I think most tenants would be fine with that, but that's just a guess.
So you're saying Monday through Thursday at 10 o'clock, and then what was the second part of that?
Friday, Saturday.
Sunday through Thursday,
Sunday.
Yep.
Sunday through Thursday at 10 o'clock? And then Friday, Saturday, you said 1 a.m.?
What was that?
No, what did you say Saturday, Sunday?
like you said, 12:30? No, you said
What?
Whiskey Jack at your house.
Whiskey Jack was 12:30. Yep.
So Friday, Saturday, we were saying what?
I thought we said 11.
So I have 11.
so
We did.
question through the chair, I mean, I'm putting myself in these guys' they get a restaurant that shows Monday night football games. What's the,
Guess you have to watch it after 10.
just curious, I mean, low volume cutoff's at 10, so if the TV's on, they gotta shut the volume off no matter what.
That's
They
right.
can still project it.
They're not
Outside. Outside. Yeah, but the people that are gonna stay for that,
Right. But they can shut the TVs off and still project the screen, and people can still hang out till 11, as it's stated.
That's correct, yeah, the TVs would have to, the sound would have to stop, the TV could technically stay on.
So would you say that, going, kind of building on that idea, are you saying that like outdoor restaurant service would stop at a certain time? Or are you saying,
11 o'clock.
so,
Well,
so outdoor service would stop Sunday through Thursday at 10 is what you said? And then it would stop at 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday nights? So the indoor could still be open, but the outdoor service would have to stop. Okay.
yeah, I don't think anybody.
I don't think we're trying to limit indoor right now. We're not gonna be doing that.
and this isn't a CBD type of operation. This is a high-end residential district all the way around. And they're 2.1 lots away from those speakers.
I'm gonna put Gadiger misery in, just say, like, if it's outdoor service stops, maybe that condition number 5 says, outdoor restaurant service shall cease operations at 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 11 p.m. Friday, Saturday, adjacent to Jack's Drive.
I think it should be, include the people on A1, A2, because they're only 5 lots away with nothing between them.
I don't know what we're doing for A1A. We have the one site, it's on the far east side of,
That's the AT&T building where Applebee's used to be, AT&T guys.
there's a huge road, and there's a huge amount of space between them. There's a retention pond, and trying to look at the geometry.
Yeah, and that's all reflective material, the retention pond and the highway.
Will the highway be more noisy? People there?
And it slows down at that time of day.
Look,
So number 5, Steve, number 5 here would read, outdoor restaurant area shall cease operation at 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. Let's just separate where we were talking about, leave the speaker thing up under number 4.
and I think adding it adjacent to Jacksonville Drive, rather than making it apply to every outdoor seating location that we're asking for.
That's certainly a change that hasn't come up before.
Now, the condition that was in the original staff report said no outdoor music next to Jacksonville Drive.
That's correct, that's number 3, but that's not the same that we're talking about now.
I guess I'm bringing that concept in here
Yeah.
because
He's kind of,
Well, that's what I'm saying, that hasn't come up before.
he's agreeing to the 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday on Jacksonville Drive that we have the biggest issue with, asking for us not to put the same condition on.
But that's not what we were just discussing. We were discussing, and maybe I'm incorrect, but we were discussing all of them. Weren't we all discussing all of them?
I'm asking for the same rationale to apply, but if you don't want it to apply to everything, then
What we were talking about.
in the spirit of compromise, we'll just let it go. I mean,
I'm talking time.
okay,
So that's number 5. Is it the one we're talking about, Steve?
yeah,
So does that stand as the chair had just read?
yeah, we would agree that.
All right, I was just thinking about what Steve was proposing.
So,
Steve, I'm sorry, can you just
well, what I wrote was the outdoor restaurant service shall cease operations at 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. That's what I wrote, but
It says, okay, outdoor restaurant area shall cease operations, what it says on the piece of paper in front of me, which is the memo from
I think Mr. Capoli clarified that the low amplified code actually designates that it must be turned off at 10 p.m. anyways, right?
That's correct, and credit goes to the officer.
So, back to Mr. Dahl's original point. Originally, we were dealing with there shall be no outside speakers permitted for outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive. And then, so we were still considering that with other restaurant areas, meaning the one where the AT&T store is today and the other one that's just flat against the south. Yeah. Other restaurant areas may have outside speakers, but shall be limited to low volume outdoor amplified and acoustic sound. Or since they're subject to 10 o'clock, do we not feel that that's an issue, Mr. Dahl?
I thought we were discussing, based on the low amplified, that us talking was actually going to be louder than whatever projected sound that was going to be coming out of the speakers. So.
I have a question for Mr. Capoli. Did you say earlier that you were going to, when Mr. Dahl went through his argument, did you say earlier that you were just going to add number 3 back to?
I'm saying if that's what the commission wants to do, we can. It's available. I think the language that was there was written to accomplish that without too much trouble, so it was simply a matter of incorporating that into condition 4.
Okay. Would you agree, Mr. Dahl, if we added that on and put a time maybe 8 o'clock for the ones that are next to the Jacksonville Drive spots for their speakers? They can have speakers, but they should shut down at 8.
Yeah, I think that.
Would that be acceptable?
Now, look, we're really struggling here to try and, you have a code that allows for it, you have a standard that's enforceable. What we're asking for is not unreasonable. Maybe you could put a condition that says on the Jack's Beach side that the speakers have to be pointed away from the neighborhood so that you know that the speakers are under cover of the main structure and pointed away from the neighborhood or something like that. Because I guess theoretically you could put a speaker out on the sidewalk and point it back at the neighborhood. But I mean, no, we're getting dinged by 1,000 cuts. I mean, it's already turning off at 10 o'clock. It's an enforceable standard. Type of people that we're attracting here are not the types of people that went there historically. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I just, limiting it further to 8 o'clock is just not.
I'm suggesting limiting it 8 o'clock rather than having it not at all.
I understand. Well, we think that it's warranted to have music and low-level ambiance music until 10 o'clock. It's just not, I just don't understand. It's not something they're going to hear across the street. They're not going to hear it across the street.
As a suggestion, if we're split on this, sounds like we're kind of split on this up here, but hear me out. If we were to grant the outdoor music for, under the low volume standards, and we imposed, they come back after 1 year, should there be no incidents, we readdress it then.
That's what we did with Whiskey Jack's.
Have you guys seen Whiskey Jack's back? So I'd like to go back and revisit the hours. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Sanders. I would suggest leaving number 4 alone as it reads currently and adding, even though it probably doesn't have any teeth, when you combine it with a 12-month look at, restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive, or we all know which ones we're talking about, right? Shall have speakers oriented to the south, away from that area, away from those residential areas. And leave it at that and have the 12-month thing on it, I think will take care of itself.
Is the 12-month look back only because I'm not familiar with what you did for Whiskey Jack's? Was that like a mandatory come back in 12 months, or was it if you get a certain number of code complaints?
It's a mandatory comeback, and at that point, we could say we don't want to see you again in 12 months. Or, yeah, remove it, or if there's issues, then we have a discussion.
Okay. Right. Again, I think.
It's almost just, I mean, it's like a trial, like.
I understand. No, I think it's a great idea. We'd be
We
happy
did it, we've done it many times.
We'd be happy to participate in the trial. I have one more question though, after we get done with this noise, and I want to go back to the structures and the ASTM standards. I have a question about that. But as for the trial, 1 year, we'd be fine with that. And the south, and the speakers pointed to the south for the Jack's Drive sides.
Well, Mr. Chair, that's what I was gonna ask. Let's clean this up a little bit. Are we done with the proponents'
I just have
comments?
one question. ASTM would,
Hang on, Steve.
okay, sure.
Let's get number 4. Are there any questions on number 4, or do people generally agree with what we just talked about, which was leaving it the way we have it in front of us now? Outdoor restaurant areas may have outside speakers that shall be blah, 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 blah. And adding a sentence on the end, restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive shall have speakers oriented to the south.
With the 12 months comeback.
Yeah, that's a sort of a separate thing.
Okay.
I mean, that 12-month will be, is gonna apply to this entire thing, so.
Yes.
Through the chair, just for clarification, the 12 months would start, I assume, with the passage of the final ordinance, not necessarily when a tenant moves into that space. Okay.
So there's the noise issue, Mr. Chair, and we have a time issue.
So 4 and 5 are done, I think. I think 6 is done, because we said that, there shall be no overnight merchandise or displays left on sidewalks outside of parcel 4 as an additional sentence onto number 6.
What was the final time that you said? Sorry, I know you said 5.
It was 10,
Final time for what?
They're closed, the outdoor.
he's got it.
Sunday through Thursday, 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 11 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify, in number 5, outdoor restaurant services or service shall see separation as opposed to areas shall see separation? So I think that makes more sense. I just want to make sure we're all thinking the same thing.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm going back up to the top, Steve, just to
I-
make sure we're,
Yeah,
This isn't a workshop.
I just don't see ASTM standard C40 anywhere. I look at it online and it's about organics material. So I don't know what the use of an ASTM standard is on the condition number 3. Anyway, I'm just throwing it out there because I don't know what we were agreeing to if that standard is inserted as a condition. I think the way it's read, or the way it's written, gives the staff and the permitting folks the ability to determine final design.
right, and
of
I'm only somewhat comfortable with that.
Okay, well, I don't know how to, again, if we have ASTM standard C40 in a place where you have it on your phone, I can't find it. So I'm just trying to figure out what that means.
Mr. Chair, who put the words crime prevention through environmental design best practices? Or Mr. Propoli, did anybody know where that came from?
That was for me.
Okay, and what does that mean?
So it's a standard of best practices that's applied to a bunch of different aspects of planning. In this particular case, things like target hardening, which deals with vehicle collision preventions, particularly into buildings and things like that. The standards allow them to be militaristic, not strict concrete bollards, but they can be alternative designs like planters or flagpoles or things like that that are innocuous to the public, so they don't look.
Thank you. I think that's a good standard, Mr. Chair.
do they also provide safety requirements? Is that standard that you know of? So we understand that they're more visually appealing per se, but do they also define a standard for which they need to be impact resistant or?
No, they are intended to be more of a, like I said, a site design standard as opposed to what the chairman suggested, which I did find as a standard for bollard collisions, so I believe that's a correct reference.
Yeah, I was trying to look it up right now, so.
Yeah, okay, if adding the word bollard makes it a lot more.
Yeah, I think the standard is, the detail behind it, Steve, is that a 5,000-pound vehicle at 30 miles an hour, again, that's where I made the reference earlier, let's hope nobody's going 30 miles an hour out there, but we can't all predict that, that it would stop that vehicle within 24 inches of the barrier.
Yeah, okay, I get it, I understand.
That,
I found it, yeah, I added the word bollard, to the search.
so if there's something, we won't call out bollard in there unless that's the pleasure of the commission, but that's the standard that I would like to see met. And I'm not sure that what Mr. Popoli has called out here with this CPTED goes to that granularity.
No, not
And
at all.
that's what I'm not comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a design aspect and a safety aspect is all we're trying to get, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think that's a good addition.
I don't care what they look like. I hope they look great. I mean, you know, there are bollards that are put up that then have these, you know, like plastic decorative things that look like they're metal or cement or something, and they're really nothing more than plastic covers. Of course, that plastic cover does nothing. It's just an aesthetic. So
We understand. I think it's clear from our discussion that if we have to come back and revisit it, the staff will be able to tell what we're talking about from the conversation. So ASTM C40 for traffic safety is fine. We would agree to that.
additional discussion. Is someone prepared to put this into a motion?
That's exactly what I was gonna ask, Mr. Chair. Does anybody have all of the notes all the way through that you just talked about, or you wanna do them one more time?
Let me read one more time what I think where we're at, okay? But I can't make the motion. I'll just read one more time where I think we're at. Number one, as written. Number two, as written. Number three, outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to drive, I'm gonna say that a little different, because drive aisles could be interpreted. Outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to the northern drive aisle leading out to Jacksonville Drive, shall provide protective barriers along the entire exterior perimeter. And what I mean by that is the three sides, if there's three sides, it could be curved, I don't know, but it's the sides that don't face the business, okay? So whatever encompasses the seating area. You know what I mean? You could wrap around the end or something. Well, completely encircled, I mean, inside too, which obviously we don't need that. I mean, it seems implied, but yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Entire exterior perimeter, and again, that's meant to mean the three, whatever sides are not adjacent to the subject business, because obviously you think they're protected there. Barriers minimum ASTM C40 rating and shall be placed to allow no further than 48-inch opening. Barriers shall have a minimum ASTM C40 rating and shall be spaced to allow no further than any 48-inch opening. In other words, you're not going to let a vehicle get through there. And then we can keep that last sentence, whatever final designs can be determined.
The last two sentences.
The CPTED.
Yeah.
Okay. Creative forms of barriers may be considered under crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED best practices. And then final designs of barriers to be determined through the standard design review process, incorporating the above guidance. Meaning the ASTM C40. Number 4, as written, and the addition at the end of restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive shall have speakers oriented to the south.
Then the 1 year look back.
The 1 year look back is going to be across this entire thing. I don't know what we would look back on a number of these, but it would be easier to, instead of picking something out of there, Steve, just to have it. Number 5, outdoor restaurant areas shall cease operation at 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and at 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
More areas of service.
I'm sorry. Outdoor restaurant services shall cease operation at 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. Friday, Saturday. And then number 6, as written, with the addition of there shall be no overnight merchandise or displays left on sidewalks outside of parcel 4. I think in the form of a motion to approve as a conditional use, you would just conditional use for 12 months, and however you want to word that or say that, revisit that, however we want.
Is that number 7?
Sorry?
Is that number 7?
No, I think that needs just to be written in before you have items 1 through 6.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes, sir.
the problem with that is we're signing a lease with tenants for a restaurant use. So if that condition, the 24-month or the 12-month look back applies to everything, what you're basically saying is that if we don't want a restaurant there, we can take away the restaurant. There's no way we can get a lease using that condition. I think the condition for the 12-month look back was really focused on the noise,
Muzak.
the Muzak, yeah. So that's,
I agree. Let's just add that to the end of number 4.
I agree.
and the other thing is, I'm sorry I didn't hear on the separation between the bollards. The standard says that it stops the car with it, so there's no more than 24 inches of penetration, but it doesn't set the standard between the bollards. I couldn't remember, did you say 24 or
48 inches.
48 inches separation, that's fine. Okay.
You go much beyond that and something that's going to be able to fit. Yeah.
That's totally fine, thank you for the clarification.
And I think if you go much smaller than that, you would start running into an ADA thing as well.
Thank you.
Given that, I'd gladly put that into a motion, no longer
part of the motion? I'm the newest person on the board, and if you do a motion and we don't have this in front of us, are we doing a motion on what we're saying with something not in front of us?
Well, somebody's gonna have to state it, that's why I thought I can't. So
Oh,
I'm trying to get that down.
I'm just gonna have to read it back.
okay.
May I ask a question? I don't know if it's to the chair or to Christian. That was my question as well. Are you going to do a motion on these conditions, or like the last meeting, is the memo going to document the changes and have the memo come back for?
That is what I
Approval.
thought we were gonna do.
I don't know either way, but that was just my question.
Well, the
We've
problem
already-
is that,
We've already put these guys off for a few weeks, so I'd rather, we've done this before, guys. We can read this, into the record, and we're gonna have the minutes to review anyway. If we need a minor adjustment to what the intent was in 2 weeks or whatever it is to that, then we'll make that adjustment. But
Through the chair, if I could just, this is a rezoning ordinance, so it's gonna go on as a recommendation to council relatively quickly, so we would certainly try and get these down as best as possible.
I would,
My experience is that what you've created on the record already is sufficient for the motion and for Mr. Popoli to capture when he drafts the report that goes to council. If this were the final stop, I might say otherwise, but I really believe there's enough in the record for Mr. Popoli to capture everything and keep it moving. But I wouldn't object if somebody reads it again, but.
Mr. Chair? I don't think I would agree with Mr. Deeb now that we don't have to have a motion. Why don't you read what you read earlier, 1 through 6 plus the addition. See if Mr. Popoli has it. If he doesn't, he will give it. Or I'll try and read it and make the motion.
I can read it back. And then someone will have to make a motion, since I cannot. Okay? They can make a motion off of what I agree.
Yeah, can you just, I'm sorry, state what our edits are to this, and then we can
Yep.
make a motion to change.
Yep.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
So as submitted by staff this evening, with the following changes. Number 1, none. Number 2, none. Number 3, outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to the northern drive aisle leading out to Jacksonville Drive shall provide protective barriers along the entire exterior perimeter, meaning the sides that are not adjacent to the business, whether that be rounded, exact, north, east, west, whatever. I think everybody understands the spirit of that. Outdoor restaurant areas adjacent to the northern drive aisle leading in and out from Jacksonville Drive shall provide protective concrete barriers along the entire exterior perimeter. Meaning the sides not adjacent to the business, open paren, closed paren on that, of the seating area. Barriers shall have a minimum ASTM C40 rating and shall be placed no further than 48 inches apart. Again, the idea there, depending on what y'all want to do, let's say you got some giant boulder from Colorado and sat it there would not be any opening larger than 48 inches anywhere. Then we will pick up with creative forms of barriers may be considered under crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED best practices, Final designs of barriers to be determined through the standard design review process, incorporating the above guidance. Any questions, Mr. Propoli?
No, I got that. Thank you.
Number 4, as written, with the addition of the following sentence. Restaurant areas adjacent to Jacksonville Drive shall have speakers oriented to the south. And the following sentence. This condition shall be revisited in 12 months. Number 5, outdoor restaurant services shall cease operation at 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. Friday, Saturday. Number 6, as written, with the addition of the sentence, there shall be no overnight merchandise or displays left on sidewalks outside of parcel 4. Period. That might be something I would recommend as a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
You have to make a motion. No, I'm not making a motion. You have to make a motion based on that.
Motion to approve what was just stated as the edits written into the, spoken into the record by Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Margot Maury,
Yes.
Brittany Sanders,
Yes.
Colleen Murphy-White,
Yes.
David Dahl,
Yes.
Greg Sutton.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Mr. Propoli, Planning Department report.
Quick reminder that next Wednesday we have another town hall meeting, this time on the Marina project to the north of Beach Boulevard. And then, I don't have a final date, but towards the middle of September, hopefully we will have a training with council provided by our contract attorney for land use matters. So we
I
go
thought we would
over.
have a date on that.
I'm sorry?
I think we do have a date on that.
Do you have a date on that?
They have all 3 events coming up.
What is the date for that?
We'll send you the email.
Okay, I'll just check with Heather. I didn't realize it had gone out, but at any rate, yeah, that was coming up as well. So,
September 10, at
Okay.
1 o'clock, Friday.
so that'll be covering comprehensive plan, zoning, land development issues. So,
Polly, just a question on the meeting, the workshop. Is that this Wednesday or the first?
September 1st.
Okay, thank you.